Okay, I will go ahead and call the Village of Essex Junction Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, September 28th to order. And do we have any agenda additions or changes tonight?
You have one addition of an executive session for personnel.
Thank you. And I know there are some documents that Brad had just sent over to all of us, I think to all of us at least. One is the city budget, one is a budget message, the presentation for the public hearing, as well as an update to the special election warning.
Yep, and then I would just add, Andrew, the 2 Lincoln plans that were sent yesterday.
Okay. Anything else? If not, then I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
You mean
Second?
All right, is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, so that passed unanimously. Thank you all. And that will bring us into public to be heard. So this is the portion of tonight's meeting where if anybody has any questions on or comments on things that are not on the agenda that you'd like the Village Board of Trustees to know, now is the time to do so. The way you can do that is if you're using Microsoft Teams, you can raise your hand and I'll make sure to call on you and make sure that you have time to speak. If there are any attendees in the room, I would ask that you please raise your hand, and Evan or George, can I ask one of you to, or Marguerite? So along that line, we'll start off with those in the room. If there are any members of the public who wish to address the board about something that's not on the agenda, please raise your hand.
Mr. President, we have 3 citizens and Susan McNamara Hill in the room. Does anybody in the room want to speak? If you do, come right to this front microphone. Nope. No takers.
So going into Microsoft Teams, again, go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to raise something to the board that is not on the agenda. I do not see any hands going up. So with no hands, we will go off of public to be heard and into agenda item 5A, which is a public hearing on the charter for the city of Essex Junction. So I will ask for your patience as I get the presentation up.
Andrew, do you want me to share in the packet?
Do you have the presentation?
I don't think I have the public hearing. I have just what's in the packet. So if you have something different than that, then
Yeah, this is what Brad had just sent over.
Oh.
I've got it right here. There we go. And my graphics card is not optimal for this, so we'll see how this goes. Are any of you seeing any? There we go.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
All right. So we have the Village of Essex Junction public hearing on the charter for the city of Essex Junction. The way that this will go is I will go through the presentation. As this is a public hearing, I will prioritize questions, comments, concerns from the residents. And then after that, we will come back to the board. If the public has any questions, I ask you to wait until the very end because frankly, from a logistical standpoint, I'm not able to see hands being raised. So please hold your comments to the end. You may be asking yourselves, where can you find a copy of the charter? And you can not only get a physical copy at the town office of 81 Main Street, you can also get an online version at essexjunction.org/proposed charter. I'm sure the big question is, what is it exactly that we are voting on? And really the question comes down to whether or not to adopt a new municipal charter that would transform the village into an independent city and no longer be a part of the town of Essex. And you can see the language as to what that question will look like for those of you who will be voting on the question. In terms of why are we doing this? Well, since 1950.
Andrew, I
Yes.
apologize. I think you've probably gone into presentation mode on your screen, but you're sharing a static slide deck.
Oh, that's lovely.
I was like, he's definitely staring.
There we go.
Is that better?
So if you want to back up one, that is better. You may also be able to, yeah, we can just do that. Let's do that.
There we go. So you all saw this for a while, didn't you? And now I'm getting some feedback. Is that just me getting feedback or others?
No, you sound better now.
Oh, well, thank you, Evan. So here we go. You saw that first slide for a while. Here's where you can find a copy of the charter. And again, this presentation is also a part of the public record, and I'm sure will be up on the village's website at some point in time in the relatively near future. Here is that question as to what are we voting on, and you can see the ballot question is down towards the bottom. Here's where I left off of why are we voting on this to begin with? Well, without a doubt, since 1958, there have been many times where the community has voted whether to merge or to separate from and or with the town of Essex. For those of us who have been involved since March and April of this year, villagers had voted overwhelmingly by about 80% to merge with the town both times, and the town outside the village had voted overwhelmingly by about 70% not to merge. In April, there was a non-binding article asking the trustees to pursue independence or separation by November if that merger vote failed, which it did, and that non-binding article had passed by more than 75% of village voters. So with the merger vote failing, the trustees have been are presenting the independent city of Essex Junction's charter to village voters. In terms of what's staying the same, the short version is almost everything. There's still going to be a 5-member governing board. So those of us on the trustees, the board would look very similar to what you have now. Everybody is elected at large with 3-year terms, just like what we have now. A president and a vice president would be elected by the board, just like we have now. The city would not have a mayor. The trustees, who are the trustees at the time of the charter taking effect, will then become city councilors. And this is rooted into state law, where you can't, or federal law, where you can't remove somebody from their elected seat. The annual budget would be presented to voters and voted on by Australian ballot, similar to what was just recently passed for the village. Essex Junction will maintain our identity. We will continue to enjoy the high quality services that we have for years, and our quality of life will be maintained as well. In terms of differences, really, Essex Junction will have full control of our own future. Our tax dollars will stay and be invested within the city only, as we would not be paying taxes to the town of Essex. We would be an equal municipality, just like every other Chittenden County municipality. And the planning boards would shift from a planning commission and the zoning board that we have now to a planning commission and a development review board. In terms of how we got here, I had referenced the votes before. That happened both in March and April. And then since April 27th of this year, the trustees have been dedicating the first 60 to 90 minutes of our meetings to have work sessions on independence. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had approved of the charter. And then today's is the first public hearing on this charter. Our next meeting on October 12th is our second public hearing. And then the subsequent vote will happen November 2nd. So if the vote passes, the charter is approved by village voters, then the Essex Junction legislators would introduce a bill into the House of Representatives. And then between May and June, we would anticipate that the bill would be taken up and considered by the House and Senate committees who have jurisdiction on the matter. Hopefully then ultimately the bill would be voted upon by the full House and Senate, and then ultimately signed by the governor. That would mean July 1st of 2022, the city would be formed. And then that first year would be a transition year where the city would need to hire the leadership and prepare for the full operations, renovations to Lincoln Street to accommodate staff, as well as the IT infrastructure need to be put in place. All of that would allow for a July 1 of 2023 time when the city would be fully operational to Lincoln Street. One thing that must be noted here, though, is that the legislature can, of course, change the timeline and/or the bill could fail somewhere along the way. If that happens, then this timeline would not be what you see. In terms of the financial impacts, the next few slides are an estimation of the budget and the tax rates and are based on tax rates and tax information for our current fiscal year, had the city of Essex Junction been fully formed and functioning at this time. An actual future budget will be developed by the city manager, would need to be approved of by the city council, and just like what we do now, would be presented to city voters at the annual meeting to have the voters vote upon. This budget that you would see would reflect the organization of the city after the conclusion of any shared and contracted relationships with the town of Essex, other than for police services. So in other words, the city would end up having its own finance, assessing, and senior services. So as you can see from the fiscal year 22 budgets, this first column is what the village currently has for or would receive for revenue and where those come from. You will see where the revenue for the town of Essex comes from in the second column. The third one is how much in total taxes village residents pay through both being village residents and town residents. That fourth column is the estimation as to what the city would then need to raise to cover the expenses of the city. And then finally, that last column is what the overall difference is for taxes. So you can see that the city of Essex Junction at this point in time is estimated to need $800,000 less in revenue than what villagers currently pay. In terms of expenditures, you can see again using that same logic of what we pay through our village taxes, what the entire town pays. Then that third column as to what village residents pay through being both village and town residents, the estimate for the city, and then what that change would be. You'll notice some areas in which the amounts are lower and some are higher. For those where the amounts are lower, such as community development, the reason why they are lower is because in the village, we already have a fully functioning community development department that would not need to change or that may not need to change for our own needs in the city, and we pay into the town's community development department. That portion of paying into the town's community development department would no longer be necessary with the city of Essex Junction, and so that's why there is a decrease. In terms of an increase for, say, county and regional, currently the Chittenden County or Green Mountain Transit, for example, is paid for through the town taxes and not through the village currently. So in a city, we would end up paying for that, and so that's why you would see that number being higher as an example. And that same methodology going down into this part 2 of the expenditures. So some of the key findings in transforming the village to a city is that the taxes would need to decrease or would be decreasing to help support the operations of the city. Overall property taxes would be decreased by around $730,000. General fund spending on municipal government services by the village/city property owners would then be decreasing by $811,000. Tax rates would go down by approximately 7.25%. And again, this is a municipal tax rate. This does not mean your tax bill would go down by 7.25%, as our taxes are consolidated with the school district. The savings on a village/city owned home with an assessed value of $300,000 would be approximately $195 per year. You can see the tax rate differences based upon this budget. the municipal taxes impact and what that would mean on the villages and or cities' assessed home value. The key portion here is assessed. So when we talk about an assessed value, it is not the same thing as an appraised value or what you may get if you were to sell your home, as those are clearly different. The big takeaway here is that the taxes would go down. These are some of the most significant cost savings. And the biggest reason for that, you'll see in that first bullet, is really the largest cost savings from no longer paying for the services that we pay for in the town. You can see the cost increases. And based upon that fiscal year 22 savings, you can go ahead and see what's the total village change would be. That bottom line number of the general fund spending on municipal services and the reduction of $811,000. So for some frequently asked questions about what is happening with the police, the short answer is the trustees and the select board have been working together, and so far we have come to a fair amount of agreement in terms of how that would be paid for, but to maintain the police services that we currently expect through the town of Essex. And when we talk about police services, we're talking about dispatch, law enforcement, animal control, community justice, so on and so forth. Do we have the means and the assets to be a city? The short answer is yes. The village has been operating since 1893. We have the water, we have sewer, we have streets, we have what a community in Vermont needs to have. So we absolutely have the means and the assets to be a city. In terms of new hires, we will need to, in converting to a city, we will need to hire 4 new people. And those are the city manager, an assistant city manager / HR director, an assessor, and an assistant city clerk. The 2 Lincoln Street building would continue to be where the city of Essex Junction would operate. And then how will the city continue to grow its grand list? Well, by no longer being a part of the town, all taxes paid by village residents and then city residents would be invested in Essex Junction only. So it allows for us to maintain our focus and 100% of our focus onto our own economic development and downtown revitalization efforts. We have spoken about in earlier meetings that some of you may not have been attending, where the trustees have committed to continuing the services that the senior center has provided at 2 Lincoln Street, which may or may not be in partnership with the town of Essex, or they may be independent. The exact answer of that, we're not sure at this point in time, as we are still talking to the select board about that. Again, so for voting information, ballots are expected to be mailed to all active registered voters in the village of Essex Junction and are expected to arrive around October 11th. For those of you who would wish to vote in person, Tuesday, November 2nd at the Essex High School between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. would be the hours. And to make sure you are registered to vote, or even to register to vote online, you can go to that link on the screen. The next public hearing will be in, I believe it says 2 weeks away on October 12th. If you have any other questions that you don't raise tonight, you think about later on, you see the contact information for all of us trustees on the screen, as well as essexjunction.org/independence is where you can get some information on the website. And with that, I would be looking for questions, comments from the public. So the way we will do this is I will ask for those of you in the room, if we can prioritize those in the room who may have questions, to go ahead and raise your hand so that Evan, Marguerite, or George, if you could identify whether there's anybody who has any questions that's in the room.
Yes, we have, yes, one, if you could come up to the microphone and just state your name. Is that okay?
Sure.
If not, the people at home won't hear anything.
Oh gosh. I'm Jane Thurston. I live on Stanton Drive, own a home there. I was just wondering, do you have a handout for us tonight with all this that you've just been talking about on paper?
We don't, but if you give us your email address or
Okay.
home address, we'll get one to you.
Okay, perfect. I
Yes,
would
and
like that,
if you-
because I'm better at reading than going online and doing all that
Right,
stuff.
and I can tell you, if you don't mind me, Andrew, if you go onto the EssexJunction.org website,
Uh-huh,
all of the information is there.
okay.
All of the information we're presenting tonight is there. You can just go
Okay.
home tonight, go to
No,
EssexJunction.org.
I'm not gonna
and-
do that tonight, but
Right.
what do you want, my email address?
Give me your name, your email address.
Okay,
and we'll
sorry.
Send you something.
All right.
Full service.
Thank you. What are you
You
gonna
can
do?
ask your question too, if you have any questions.
Okay, Dan. Okay, my phone number in case you needed it.
Yeah, well,
Kept my New Hampshire phone number.
Did you have any other questions or concerns?
Well, I know that everybody has a concern about the taxes going up, and it's difficult just the way they are now for me, as a single woman who's 69 years old. So, I get my Social Security, and that's what I live on, and I have to. It's difficult, and I don't want to move. My 3 grandchildren live in town here, so that's why I moved here. So I just like to, know more about how all this works, and having a paper copy would be great.
And Andrew, just to go back, you said that the information you presented showed the taxes will go down. Is that correct?
Yes, it was approximately 7% is what the municipal taxes would go down, as the city would need to raise approximately $800,000 less than what villagers currently pay.
Okay, well, that's significant, isn't it?
Yes.
That's good. Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming out tonight.
You're welcome.
Those of you at 2 Lincoln, were there others in the room?
Anyone else? Everyone good? I think that's it, Andrew, for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So then I will turn it over to those of you using Microsoft Teams. If you had any questions, comments, concerns about the public hearing that you just heard, please go ahead and use the raise your hand function, and I will make sure to call on you and give you the time to speak. There we go. So first on the list, Andy Suntup, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I've been here about 6 years, and I'm very satisfied with the services we receive, the way we're doing business. I'm very satisfied with those who are running the show, both the trustees and staff. The only thing that I am not satisfied is the taxes, and I think everybody on the room and on the computer agrees on that. Are you close to 100% confident the taxes are going to go down, that 7% you're talking about, when we have to pay for new employees, a new computer system, everything that we don't have to pay 100% for as we share everything? Because if you're not approaching 99% confidence, it just seems like you've all spent a lot of time working on this, and it doesn't make sense when that's the only thing that people really do care about. I leave it in your hands now.
Thank you for the question. I would say that, speaking for myself, yes, I am 100% confident, based upon the information that we have, that the taxes would go down by that amount. So I hope that helps to answer your question.
That answers it. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I cut in too? Can I just make a comment here?
You are more than welcome to.
Things besides the fact that the taxes would go down, the taxes raised would stay local. There would no longer be a sharing of the taxes with the town. So the taxes raised would all stay within Essex Junction, which is another, I think, important consideration.
Thank you for that, George.
And Andrew, I'll just, if I could, I know we're not supposed, I guess we're not doing this, but he mentioned he was very satisfied with service levels, and that is anticipated to stay the same because we are largely used to providing our own services in the village. For a move like this, where the employees we would need to hire is really not as significant or not as many as you would imagine. And I think we anticipate service levels largely remaining the same.
Thank you, Raj. So next on the list is Stephen Eustace. Steve, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Hello, Steve Eustace. I just wanted to thank the board. As you know, I was involved back in '99 when I was a trustee with a similar initiative to become independent, and there's a fair amount of work in that. We were told to do due diligence, work with the town as best we can, and I think we've spent the last 20 years doing a lot of that. We know that where that all ended up at the end of the day, and I think there was a lot of good there, regardless. And now, we have this initiative from the non-binding vote last spring, and I think a tremendous job has been done since then. And I think there's been a lot more homework done and plan put together than we did back in 1999. And I feel very comfortable with what you've presented, and I've been following the minutes and things of recent meetings over the summer. And so I don't have any specific questions, just a thanks for all the hard work that's gone into this. I think it's a great plan. And I look forward to supporting it when the ballots come out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Next hand that I see is Mike Sullivan. I see that you're unmuted. Go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for doing this. I just want to know if this presentation will be available video-wise outside of the whole meetings town TV thing. If we could encapsulate this presentation, I think it would be very good. It would help me when I go to when I'm doing the canvassing door to door to say, hey, spend 20 minutes watching this, and you'll have considerably more information than you may have now. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. I do appreciate that idea. So I am not seeing any new hands up on Microsoft Teams. I assume the two current hands up are ones that are people who have already spoken, didn't have anything new. And now I see Greg Morgan, your hand is up. Go ahead and unmute yourself. The floor is yours.
Okay, you can hear me?
Go right ahead.
You can hear me? Great. Yeah, so one of the earlier commenters said the people in the audience were only concerned about taxes. And actually, that's not true, at least not for me. I mean, I supported the merger all along because I've worked for 30 years on economic development issues related to the town and the village. And I think the fact that we're the second largest municipality and leader in advanced manufacturing was a powerful part of our story, but we're going to lose that. But that said, I think it's time. We need to clarify what's going on and simplify. We could have simplified through merger. That's no longer possible. So now I want to simplify through independence. Thanks, guys, for your work. I think you've done a great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. Mr. Suntup, I believe your hand is back up. Was there something new?
Yes, I just would like to know what happens as far as our access to Indian Brook and to the Essex Free Library.
With the Essex Free Library, that's a slightly easier one in the sense that with the home card system, you would have the same level of access to Essex Free Library as we all do to any of the other libraries within the state of Vermont. So there's really no restriction on that. With Indian Brook, that's still a work in progress that we have not come to an agreement with the select board on at this point in time.
Okay, when do you think you will know about that? Before the vote?
I would like to say yes, but I think that that would be a little too ambitious, to be honest with you. I don't think we're going to know that answer before the vote.
In other words, we're going to be voting and you won't have all the i's dotted and the t's crossed at that point. This will still be a work in progress.
With Indian Brook, yes, that would still be a work in progress. What I would say in regards to Indian Brook is that the town has changed the way that their passes work. And regardless of residency, everybody is able to get a day pass. Only residents are able to get an annual pass, but non-residents are able to get a day pass. So during the months of, I believe it is April or May through September, I believe, is when a pass would be necessary to go to Indian Brook. But to your question, yes or no, we don't have that answer at this point in time.
Will there be any other questions when we're voting that aren't answered? That can throw a wrench into how much we save?
Not that I can think of, although not that I can think of at this time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Greg Morgan, is your hand up still the holdover from before?
Right, I'm done.
Thank you. So I am seeing no new hands up. So then we can go ahead and close the public hearing. Trustees, were there any other questions, comments, concerns you had that you wanted to raise?
Andrew, I just want to raise one. This is George. I just want to raise one point to go back to the original presentation. I think it just, I would like to not clarify, but just add that when the village's charter makes the village, endows the village with all the same powers of municipal government that are provided by the Constitution, the state Constitution. And I just wanted to add that because I think that sometimes people confuse incorporated village as something that is a lower entity than a town or a city, and it is not. By charter, the village of Essex Junction has all the same powers under of municipal government under the state Constitution. It's always had those powers, and it's been a full service community since 1893. Thank you.
Thank you, George. All right, so we will go ahead and close that public hearing and move on to business item 6A, a work session on Essex Junction independence.
Great, thanks, Andrew. I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm not going to be on camera, so I apologize for that. I'm sideways. And I can't figure out how to make it the other way. I'm just going to stay off.
We'll just all do this.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to stay off camera. So tonight we're going to talk about the proposal contracts discussions that you've been having the last 2 weeks with the select board. Just a quick debrief, and then take a look at some possible renovations for 2 Lincoln, and then talk about the FY22 city budget.
Thank you, Brad. So for the public, the way we have been doing this is during the work session. These are areas where we are not making formal decisions tonight, but rather we are first talking about the items that Brad had just mentioned. And along that lines, we are taking public comment on those issues. So the proposals and the contracts debrief from our meetings with the select board, the plans for 2 Lincoln Street in terms of possible renovations, and that fiscal year 2022 city budget. We're taking public comment now in advance of those items. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns on those items, now is the time to raise those. Otherwise, we will not be revisiting those later on in the meeting. So to keep that order of public comment, I would first go to the room. So George, Evan, Marguerite, is there anybody in the room with their hand up who would like to address the board on any of those items?
No.
Okay. Then we will go back to Microsoft Teams. Please go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, comment, concern for the Board of Trustees on any of those items that I had mentioned. Not seeing any hands going up. So then we will go ahead and bring it back to the board. And Brad, now to you.
Great. So the first one is just an open dialogue amongst the trustees about the two negotiations with the proposals and contracts. I know several have come in, just came in yesterday. It's just an open dialogue.
Personally, I for one feel pretty good about where we are, in the sense that, you know, with the police agreement, it's nice to be as far along as we are. With the others, so such as like finance, IT, and some of those, we'll get there. But frankly, I'm feeling reasonably optimistic about where we are in those conversations with the select board. They have been they've been working with us since August pretty diligently to this point, and we see that commitment to continue this process. So I'm optimistic. Trustees, any other thoughts about how things are going, or that you wanted to express?
Andrew, I'm not going to be just like last night, since I'm live. Or maybe I'm not sure who's live and who's not. And from your perspective, you're live, but I can't electronically raise my hand, so I'm going to have to do it here and jump in. But I just want to say, with regards to the comment about Indian Brook that we heard earlier, and I think this has been an ongoing conversation. I know it's important to many people in the village who go to Indian Brook, and I am very confident. I mean, I think the select board has indicated that they are interested in trying to come to some arrangement about Indian Brook, and with some of the things that some of the benefits that we can provide for town residents inside the village. And so I'm quite confident that we are going to work something out by the time that the charter is approved. And I think the issue is that we have been really focusing on the police contract, which is by far the most important relationship that we have, and the contract we have. And so a few of the other things, like Indian Brook and the senior center, which we are pretty sure we're going to keep, everything is going to pretty much, hopefully, the senior center will remain status quo, but Indian Brook, we're trying to work out some deal with the town, but I think those things will be resolved. I just want to also add publicly that I do want to thank the select board, because they have really collaborated with us and worked with us on this. They, like us, also have a municipal government that they have to run, and yet they have been very generous with their time in working with us on these contracts. So I wanted to express my appreciation to them for getting this done for the sake of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I believe I saw Raj and Amber shaking their heads no about things to add. We're all set with the debrief.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen. The next materials are updated plans for 2 Lincoln. These are not in the packet. So I apologize. Folks are just going to have to follow along with what we have here. John Alden is here, and he is the architect who came up with these. He's done them a few times over the years. And so if he is available, if anybody has any questions. Are you seeing the 2 Lincoln plans document?
Yes. Looks like a bulleted list.
Yep. So this is just, very quickly, some of the assumptions that Two Lincoln can indeed serve as the hall of government, that we needed space for 13 employees. There are two primary focal points. One is security. The building, currently trying to limit people to spaces without appropriate credentials, keeping an eye on entrances, having some barriers between staff and the public, and lockable, closable spaces. Certainly updating the need for health and safety, address mold and damp areas, increase airflow and filtration, increase physical space between employees and public, keep separate space for employees and public, and a separate staff bathroom were all some goals. We only are planning to add an elevator if there are intentions to renovate the second floor. Anything that's done on the first floor, it's already used as office space. We wouldn't trigger the need to put in an elevator. The senior center will continue as the senior center. The teen center will continue as the teen center, and Essex Chips will continue to have office space available here in the building. There are not any anticipated changes to that. If the option 3 or 4, which we'll look at shortly, are selected, it would affect the second floor, in which case, the Chips offices may change slightly, but they'd still be available. We'll take a look at the options in a minute, but as you can see, there's a range of cost from the low end of 845,000, on the high end, 1.5 million. We've talked about this a few times, but the village is anticipating to receive about 3.2 million in ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act. The exact uses of those funds is still being determined. Certainly, water and sewer projects are on the list, so there may be opportunities to fund some water and sewer projects and free up capital funds. And just a reminder, the only other anticipated expense that wouldn't be in the FY23 budget would be some money to get the IT infrastructure up, and this is estimated at 50 to 75,000. Okay. So I'll just show these briefly. Hopefully everybody can orient themselves. You see the conference room there that George is in over to the left. So this is option 1, where it's just, this is the first floor in option 1. It's a basement and main floor renovation only, using the existing entrance, and then putting up some barriers within the office area where staff are. And we need to create a new space for title searchers who come in to go into the vault. And so you see up in the upper right-hand corner, number 12, is that title search area. And you'll see that repeatedly throughout these drawings to provide public that access. So this cost estimate is at 660,000 plus the basement, and the conference room eventually would need to be converted into additional office space in this rendering. But that would be optional for the trustees if they wanted to keep that conference room until finance was planning to move over, or just do all the renovations at once. I'm just going to keep rolling through unless somebody stops me. This is option 2, which is also just the basement and main floor renovation. This option proposes a new entrance to the building. If you look kind of to the upper right, you see new vestibule. And so that entrance goes directly into the area that's next to the vault. And so you have access to the assistant city clerk and the title search area. This option, does a much better job of obviously keeping the public in a public space and the staff in a private space. And so this new vestibule option is appealing in that sense. There is an option to also enclose that emergency staircase that goes up to the second floor to create indoor access to get upstairs instead of going to the other side of the building. Cost estimate here with the basement is 1.1. This is the basement for both option 1 and option 2. There's 3 offices downstairs, as well as a small work or meeting space with an estimated 131,000 to add that option in. Now we're into option 3 and 4. This is option 3. Both of these options include an elevator, and so it would be work done on that elevator would go all the way to the basement as well as the first and second floors. Option 3 is you're looking at the first floor. This is also with that new entrance. So again, keeping this option really keeps the entirety of the office as office, dedicated office space where staff would be moving freely about without people from the public coming in unless they were invited in or going into that new small conference space. The cost estimate here, which we would also enclose the fire exit stairs, and we'll show you the second floor and the basement, is 1.5. So this is option 3 continued. This is the second floor of Lincoln Hall. You're looking down at the building at the same view. The portion to the left that's dark gray is the teen center. That's says existing to remain as is. And then you'll see a large conference room, which is basically the entire area over the current village offices. And then there would still be 4 offices for Essex Chips upstairs. Here's the basement rendering with the elevator and an additional bathroom in the basement. And this is the 4th option. It keeps the current entrance, adds an elevator. It creates kind of a lobby area out by the entrance. And then there's still space for the public to get back to the title searching area in the vault. So this is a little bit more of a mixture between, private space for the staff and then walking through kind of public space to get back and forth to other departments and offices. This is the second floor of option 4, which is the elevator, and this one has 5 offices upstairs for Chips and the large conference room. And this is the basement, which is similar, adding a bathroom. Then the last 3 pages are just the cost estimates, which have already been included in the previous pages. John, I don't know if you want to add anything, or otherwise, trustees, it's open for questions and comments.
I have no, you've done a great job presenting it. It was, about the 10th time I've reimagined Lincoln Hall. So we're pretty familiar with the building. And, it does have a lot of square footage in it. I think one of the things that I'll point out is many of these options, in fact, most of these options leave the CHIPS program and the senior center intact. And that is, there's a lot going on in this building, but it can work for you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Brad. Amber, your hand's up, so go ahead.
I have 2 questions. One, John, did we lose parking if we put in that extra vestibule?
You don't lose any parking. That's entirely in the grass, but there's quite a bit of electrical equipment outside that needs to be relocated, and that's expensive, but not impossible.
Is that included in the pricing that we got, the cost?
Yes, yes, it is, yeah.
Second question is, I think Brad had mentioned that if we did the 3rd floor renovation, that would trigger the necessity to put in the elevator. But if we did the basement renovations, that would trigger it as well? Or is it just the 3rd floor?
The reason we think the elevator is required if you go to the 3rd floor, well, 2nd floor, is that you've put the large meeting room upstairs, which is a public amenity that it would be unfortunate to try and pull off without getting the public to the room. So in the sense that it really becomes your meeting space, that essentially triggers the requirement for the elevator. You could put it in now. It'd be great if you had it now, but if you decided to renovate the building and put a public meeting room up there, you really got to put the elevator in. The downstairs is still a staff location. There's some reasons why you might be able to get away with not putting the elevator in just by renovating the staff spaces, but once you've decided to put the elevator in, you might as well put it in covering all 3 levels, because it's the right thing to do.
Thanks, John.
Raj, go ahead.
So, yeah, I think I'm wondering about the public meeting room. It sounds like only option 3 and 4 has, leaves the city with the option to have meetings such as this in the same building. Otherwise, we'd have to go to various locations around the community. Is that right?
I won't say that's entirely true. There are options where you could take the staff offices and put those on the second floor and leave the meeting room as is. And you probably would be okay with that. You're still under some obligation to provide accessibility, more functional accessibility to get to the staff people, but if they can come downstairs and meet with people as necessary, that should work.
Okay. And the only other question I think I had right now was the documentation we had. One of the last things it mentions was we have not budgeted for work that may need to happen and bring the building up to current codes. Is there anything anticipated there that would be of concern in terms of, do we know?
The major codes that you currently don't comply with have to do with mostly ventilation and accessibility and thermal performance. If you're not really exposing the cavities or the shell in any way, you're not really required to do the thermal upgrades. If you can provide for access to all the functioning aspects of the building, your accessibility requirements can remain relatively neutral. Ventilation, I told the mechanical people that no matter what happens, we've got to do a better job in the basement. We've got to do a better job all through the building to comply with the mechanical requirements for ventilation and airflow, air conditioning, and so forth. So I believe those costs are included in all of the options.
Yeah, okay, because especially these days with the ventilation.
Yeah.
I guess I would. Well, I appreciate that. I guess my wonder is if we're going to do this and create a renovated seat for the new city, I'd want to make sure it was. I hate to have to come back in 5 or 10 years and do more work, but if that's what we have to do for some of those things you mentioned, just something to think about, I guess, for me. Thanks.
George, since you don't have the team's hand feature, was there anything that you wanted to raise?
Not right now. I'm good. I think I like all the plans. Don't really have any specific questions right now.
Thank you, George. And my only question was around the air quality, which you just addressed, John. So I am all set as well at this point.
Good.
Appreciate your time on it for the 10th time.
Great, thanks, John. So next up is the budget. I'm going to share my screen again. Again, these materials were not in the packet, and I apologize for that. So hopefully you're seeing City of Essex Junction budget estimated. Yes.
It's a little small on the screen if you don't mind zooming in, but yes.
Sure. I'm kind of going to, breeze through this. Andrew covered really everything in the presentation. I think just a couple of things to highlight and then an opportunity to ask questions or make suggestions for changes if people want to see any of this revamped before it's put up on the website. So again, this budget uses FY22 numbers. We're not projecting out. We're only using things that we actually know. It would be too difficult to predict what a new manager would do or what year things would be in when they actually propose the first city budget. Again, this budget reflects the organization of the city when it's fully operational and self-sufficient. So it does not assume that we're sharing anything with any finances, any assessing services, any senior services. It assumes only that police is being contracted with the town of Essex. The rest of this info really, Andrew, you covered, so I'm gonna very slowly kind of scroll through just to see if anything sticks out. We see about a $200 savings on a $300,000 home. 800,000 savings on general government spending. And Andrew highlighted these, all of the big 5 departments where we have mirroring services in the town is where we see the most savings, along with the town capital fund, which we no longer would need to contribute to, and we don't really need to replace because most of those projects that are included are not projects that are within the village or city boundaries. The increases, the most significant is police, as we talked about. There's only one other increase besides the ones that are listed. So the conclusion, obviously, the Village of Essex Junction is financially well positioned to become the City of Essex Junction. Village residents can expect to continue to receive the same high level and quality of municipal services they currently receive and pay less. Cost savings will be realized by no longer paying for mirror departments in the town of Essex. And with that, I'll see if there are questions, comments, or suggestions.
Brad, I appreciate the work you've done into this, as I assume it was not something you just put together yesterday. It's taken a fair amount of time to gather all of this, so I do appreciate it, as well as it helps to really inform our community as to what this would mean from a financial perspective, which we've already heard is a significant concern. So I really appreciate that. In terms of questions, I feel like I've been pretty well informed throughout this process and don't really have any, and unfortunately can't think of any other questions that I would want the public to hear at this point, just as I can't think of other questions related to this. So trustees, I would ask you if you had any questions, comments, concerns.
No, Andrew, I would just, I'd echo your comments. I think Brad did a great job, and I know that this was actually months in putting this together. And I know you also worked with the joint village town finance staff, and I know this is a lot of work, pulling all these numbers and splitting everything like this. So I just appreciate you putting it all together. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And George, you are correct. I could not have done this without Sarah kindly answering my calls, even though I think most of the time she doesn't want to. And she gave me my magic bullet today. I could not figure out for the life of me something that was wrong, and she got me through it. So she's been very helpful.
For the record, I'm sure she was happy to do it, but she's busy. Not that she didn't want to do it, but it is a lot of work.
Yes, I'm sure it's a lot of work to oversee one budget, let alone 2 municipalities.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that for sure. So Brad, I don't think there's any other questions on that. So again,
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's it for the work session, Andrew. We have a few other items to come back to after stormwater or the Main Street water line.
Thank you, Brad. So with that, we will now go on to business item 6B, a discussion on the Main Street water line. I'm not sure who from staff is taking this.
It'll be Sarah. She was on.
Sarah was on. She was at the Capitol meeting, correct?
Yeah, she should. I'll text her.
Or I mean, Amber, maybe as chair of the Capitol Committee, if you wanted to take it.
Yeah, I don't think you want me to do that.
I can start this process.
See memo, read memo. Love Amber.
Rick Hamlin is also here. Rick, I could probably do a beginning job, but I'll let you do it, and then it'll save me a lot of consternation.
Okay, sounds good. Just let me know when you just point at me when you're ready.
Wait, I've been found. I'm here. I was listening before, then I was driving, and then there was a bath, but I'm back.
There was what?
A bath.
Oh,
My son is in the bath. My son is in the
Oh.
bathtub.
I
I
thought,
thought you said a bat.
I know.
Sarah,
Well, welcome, Sarah.
do you want to do a quick overview?
Yes, I will. And then Rick Hamlin, I'll point at you when it's your turn. So we are here tonight to bring a new project, a new highly ranked project to the trustees from the Village Capital Committee. This is the replacement of the Main Street water line. I will defer all of the details to Rick and Ricky. But the Capital Committee heard about this project over the summer. I think maybe actually May, and then again in a little bit in July, or certainly in May. And they ranked it in May, and they ranked it very high on the list for a number of reasons. In your packet, I've included the project summary, a brief overview of the project and how it was ranked and how it lines up with some of the other projects. So it's ranked right behind the two Densmore Drive culvert projects, which are in the works, and then the Brickyard culvert, which is the feeder culvert to those two Densmore Drives, my non-engineering terms, and then this project as well, mostly because of the enormous risk or the enormous disruption that would be caused if it were to fail. There is some money in the capital fund in the capital account in the water fund, but it's not going to be enough to fund this project. As I detailed in the memo, this is a project that would be eligible for ARPA funding, but we're not far enough along in that process I don't think for us to be able to say, yes, we're going to use those monies for this project, and this project needs to get moving, especially if we're going to pursue the the bonding options that I do think we will need to pursue. There are two methods that we could look to bond for this. One of them is a little bit more immediate, going with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. We would put a vote on the ballot in April, which would allow us to be part of the spring bond pool and have funding available in July. That, coupled with a reimbursement resolution, would allow us to get started a little bit before then, as soon as we knew the vote would go through. The other is the state revolving loan fund for the water. I don't have it in front of me. But and that does have a possibility of some loan forgiveness. It also has more stringent guidelines because it's federal money, and there would be Davis-Bacon and other federal requirements attached to it. And then the timeline would put us a full year out. So I'm open to discussing which of those bonding options is better, but I do want to let you know about the critical difference there is going to be, I think, the timeline, and then there's also no guarantee that there would be loan forgiveness. So if we waited, the thing failed, all the risk things. So I would love to have Rick Hamlin give you the actual details about the project, and I think Ricky Jones is here as well to weigh in, and I will pass it on over to them.
Thank you, Sarah. So, Rick, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any preamble you want to provide before I dive into the details?
I could do the basic public works thing. Says, well, it's been breaking a lot. Really got to fix this thing. And if you want to do the engineer, that'd be great. Because it does affect a lot of people. It does.
Maybe just a brief summary of the number of breaks in the past history would be helpful, and then I'll dive into engineering.
Yeah, as far as my records and my memory serves, we probably had at least 10 breaks on that line in the last 30 years. It's been quite a while since I've seen it. But then like one of the valves we had to try to fix it with the bolts holding the valve together are actually rotted away with the oils up.
And actually, I have a little. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah,
that's the one.
So this is what's left of a bonnet bolt from that valve. And when we got there to do the repair, some of the bolts were actually missing, totally corroded and gone. I don't know if you can see the detail here of that. Let's see if I can get this to focus a little bit. But the end of this bolt is just shattered, and the rest of it is totally corroded. So that's an example of what we're seeing in the ground. When the only thing holding the top of this valve, so valves are made out of two parts: the bottom of the valve and the top of the valve, which is the bonnet, and the bonnet holds the valve assembly into the core of the valve. And that bonnet, this is a bonnet bolt. The only thing holding the top of the valve on was the weight of the earth. And so when it was excavated, the top of the bonnet of the valve came completely off and was the source of one more leak on that line. So it's definitely seen the end of its life. Back to you, Ricky, and then I'll get into details.
You've got it. Go ahead, Rick. Take it and run.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you. So, Sarah, I don't know, do you have the capital sheets that you could share so we could just put up that screenshot? There we go. Thank you. So what we're talking about is replacing all of the water line on Main Street from Densmore all the way to the, essentially to the Champlain Water District water tank on Upper Main Street. It encompasses 12-inch cast iron pipe and also some 16-inch ductile iron pipe, and we'd be replacing this whole line. And this stretch of 12-inch is where the failures have occurred that Rick Jones had mentioned over time. And we've, just in the last few years, there's been the valve Brickyard, there's been the failure at Densmore that you may recall blew out the road and took quite a bit of Densmore road with it. So as a 12-inch line, when there's a failure, and the failures that we've seen have been relatively catastrophic, we're essentially dumping the contents of that water tank out of that 12-inch line. So a lot of water comes out fast. So any kind of big failure means not just failure of the water line, but potentially some really big impacts to other infrastructure, roadway, stormwater, sewer lines, everything else that's potentially in the road. And the other thing that happens is obviously when that water goes down, residents don't have potable water, but there's also not any kind of fire fighting capability when that water system is down. And probably the most important thing is that whenever that line goes down and needs to be repaired, and the line gets drained because the repairs need to be made, and then you bring that line back up, every time you open up that water line, you potentially expose that water line to contaminants getting into the water system. And so keeping the water system enclosed and pressure tight is a key part of keeping the water system in good condition from a health standpoint. So as Sarah mentioned, the Capital Committee reviewed this and scored it quite high. And the one thing I might add, Sarah, is that on your table, you still have some, I think, some allocation for, I believe it was the Lamoille Street water line, and that work's all done. So so that project is complete. So you can actually take those funds, because Lamoille has all been done and rebuilt and all put back together. So yeah, so Lamoille, the funds that were projected out in the distance, or you were holding a place for, Lamoille's complete. So anyway, back to the project. It's quite significant. Obviously, Main Street, a lot of traffic. There'll be disruption for the installation. There's quite a bit of pipe. Again, Densmore all the way up to the upper part of Upper Main Street to make the bend into the Champlain Water District tank. One of the things that's not included in here that probably should be is a pressure reducing vault. And right where the arrow is, or right at the intersection of Fairview and Main, you can see there's a break in the pipe. Yeah, right where Sarah's hand is. The idea is that right now we've got two different pressure systems in there, not interconnected. and interconnectability in that area would be very helpful. And so we also have the drawing boards right now, a pressure reducing vault that would go in that would allow an interconnect between the high and low pressure systems that would also provide another way of looping water systems and providing water should another part of the system have difficulties. We'd have a way to backfeed. So that's in a nutshell the goal of the project is to get rid of the existing old cast iron pipe that's causing problems, replace it with new ductile iron, and then take it all the way up to the tank.
Rick, thank you so much. I feel like I learn a little bit more about this project every time we talk about it. Do the trustees have any questions about this?
Yeah, so Sarah, Rick, and Rick, thank you so much. A couple of questions about the project itself to begin with. The water line that you're talking about, is it under the road and or under the multi-use path?
So it's primarily biased to the edge of the road. And so the impact would be mainly to sidewalk and the multi-use path, which is actually good because it means much less traffic disruption if the work can be done slightly off the road. And what's going to happen is that the new line would be installed and then the old line would be abandoned. So the new line would be installed, water services that are come off that line would be transferred from the old to the new. Then once all of those services had been abandoned or removed and moved to the new line, then the old line would then be properly abandoned. And so the new alignment can't fall in the same place as the existing alignment because they both need to exist at the same time. And so the new line would tend to bear more off the street than the existing line. So as you are going up Main Street, it would be to the far right for the alignment of the new water line.
When you talk about, thank you. When you talk about abandoning the existing line, do you mean that it is left to rot or it gets taken out and put somewhere else to rot? I start to think about things in the news with PFAS and ground contamination and.
So